Welcome to Legacy of Empires. If you're fascinated by ancient secrets that shaped our world, you're in for a treat. Today, we're diving into one of the most intriguing stories from ancient Rome, the birth of an elite force that would change history forever, the Praetorian Guard. Picture yourself in Rome, 275 years before Christ. The mighty city is growing, and its leaders need something special, a force unlike any other. This is where our story begins. The Praetorian Guard wasn't just another military unit. Created during a time of great change in Rome, these elite warriors were hand-picked to serve as the personal bodyguards of Roman commanders. But here's something many don't know. While the Praetorian Guard is often associated with the emperors, they actually predated the empire itself. Legend tells us that the great Romulus himself established the first version of what would become the Praetorian Guard. He chose 300 of his bravest and most loyal warriors, calling them the celeres, the swift ones. These men weren't just soldiers, they were the cream of the crop, the best fighters Rome had to offer. But why were they called Praetorians? Well, that's an interesting story. The name comes from the Latin word praetorium, which was the tent of the Roman army's commander. These guards would protect this tent and its important occupant, standing ready to give their lives if needed. Think of them as the ancient equivalent of modern-day Secret Service agents, but with even more power and influence. They weren't just protectors, they were the elite of the elite, the chosen few who would shape Rome's destiny for centuries to come. What's truly fascinating is how this small force of bodyguards would eventually grow into one of the most powerful organizations in the Roman Empire, wielding influence that went far beyond their original protective duties. But that's a story for another chapter. If you're enjoying this journey through ancient Rome, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Legacy of Empires. Ring that bell to join us on more adventures through history's greatest empires and civilizations. The story of the Praetorian Guard is just beginning, and believe me, it gets even more interesting from here. Now, let's uncover something even more fascinating. How did someone become one of these elite warriors? Imagine being a Roman soldier with dreams of joining the most prestigious unit in the empire. Well, it wasn't easy, and that's putting it mildly. The selection process for the Praetorian Guard was incredibly demanding, and only the absolute finest warriors would even be considered. While regular Roman legionaries needed to serve for 20 years, Praetorian Guards served for just 16. But don't let that fool you. These 16 years were intensely demanding, and the standards were incredibly high. They also received triple the salary of regular legionaries. Talk about a prestigious position. But money wasn't everything. To even be considered for the Praetorian Guard, a soldier needed to meet strict physical requirements. They had to stand at least 6 Roman feet tall, about 5 feet and 10 inches in modern measurements, and possess an impressive physique. But that was just the beginning. The training regime. It would make modern special forces units raise their eyebrows. These elite warriors spent countless hours mastering various weapons, swords, spears, and even specialized equipment that regular troops never got to touch. They practiced combat techniques until they could perform them blindfolded, quite literally. Praetorian Guards also had to master horseback riding and urban warfare tactics. After all, protecting the emperor in the crowded streets of Rome required very different skills than fighting on an open battlefield. But perhaps the most grueling part of their training wasn't physical at all. It was mental. Praetorian Guards had to learn court etiquette, understand politics, and even master the art of detecting conspiracies. They weren't just warriors, they were sophisticated protectors who needed to be as comfortable in the imperial palace as they were on the battlefield. The selection process was so strict that even experienced centurions from the regular legions could be rejected. Candidates needed to demonstrate unwavering loyalty, quick thinking, and the ability to keep secrets. After all, they would be privy to the empire's most sensitive information. And here's a fascinating detail. Many Praetorian Guards came from Italian families rather than the outer provinces. This wasn't just about physical prowess or military skill. It was about creating a force that was culturally and politically aligned with Rome's heart. Remember, history isn't just about dates and facts. It's about understanding how people lived, trained, and fought in times long past. And the Praetorian Guards? They set standards that would influence elite military units for centuries to come. Now, let's dive into something truly fascinating, the incredible organization that made this force so effective. Imagine a military unit so perfectly structured that it would influence military organizations for the next 2,000 years. That's exactly what the Praetorian Guard was. But how did they organize such an elite force? The Guard was divided into cohorts. Think of them as specialized units, each consisting of about 1,000 men. Initially, under Augustus, there were 9 cohorts, but later emperors increased this number to 10. Here's an interesting detail. While regular legionary cohorts had 600 men, Praetorian cohorts were bigger and better equipped. At the very top of this impressive hierarchy stood 2 Praetorian prefects. Now, here's a fascinating twist. Having 2 prefects wasn't just about military efficiency. It was a clever political move by Augustus to prevent any single person from becoming too powerful. After all, he knew better than anyone how dangerous an overly ambitious military commander could be. Each cohort was led by a tribune, assisted by several centurions. But here's something most people don't know. Becoming a Praetorian tribune wasn't just about military skill. These officers needed to be politically savvy, too. They often came from noble families and had to navigate the treacherous waters of Roman imperial politics. The centurions were the backbone of the Guard. These veteran soldiers had usually served in multiple campaigns and proved their worth countless times. Each centurion commanded about 80 men, and their position was so prestigious that they earned several times more than regular legionary centurions. But the hierarchy didn't stop there. Within each cohort you had specialists, cavalry units, intelligence officers, and even administrative staff. Some Praetorians specialized in close protection, while others focused on gathering intelligence or maintaining security in Rome's streets. The Praetorian Guard also had their own medical corps. These weren't just ordinary doctors, they were among the best physicians in the empire, responsible for keeping these elite warriors in top condition. The Guard's organization was so effective that they even had their own secret service division. These special operatives worked undercover, gathering information about potential threats to the emperor. They blended in with the crowds at the Circus Maximus, listened to conversations in the Forum, and kept their ears open in Rome's busy taverns. Another fascinating detail, the Guard maintained their own training facility on the outskirts of Rome, known as the Castra Praetoria. This fortress wasn't just a barracks. It was a symbol of their power and prestige, and its remains can still be seen in Rome today. Remember, the Praetorian Guard's organizational structure was so effective that aspects of it have influenced military and security forces throughout history, right up to modern times. Now that's what I call a lasting legacy. If you've been following our series on the Praetorian Guard, you might think you know what these elite warriors did: protect the emperor, right? Well, get ready to be amazed, because their duties went far beyond what most people imagine. Let's start with the obvious. Yes, they were the emperor's bodyguards, but this wasn't your typical security detail. Praetorian Guards were literally everywhere the emperor went. They tasted his food, checked his mail, and even stood guard while he slept. Some guards were so close to the emperor that they became his trusted advisors, wielding incredible political influence. The Praetorians were also Rome's first fire brigade and riot police. Imagine these elite warriors, in their distinctive uniforms, rushing through Rome's narrow streets to put out fires or maintain order during the wild grain riots that occasionally erupted in the city. But wait, there's more. The Praetorian Guard had a secret service division that would make modern intelligence agencies jealous. They maintained an extensive network of informants throughout Rome, from noble houses to busy taverns. They could discover plots against the emperor before the conspirators had even finished planning them. During public ceremonies, the Praetorians put on quite a show. Picture this: perfectly polished armor gleaming in the sun, purple cloaks flowing in the wind, and precision formations that would make any military commander proud. They weren't just providing security, they were displaying the might and majesty of Rome itself. Praetorian Guards also acted as Rome's special forces during military campaigns. When the emperor went to war, they weren't just his bodyguards. They were his elite shock troops, often turning the tide of battle with their superior training and equipment. But perhaps their most intriguing responsibility was protecting the imperial family. This meant they were deeply involved in palace politics, witnessing secret meetings, love affairs, and political intrigues. Some Praetorians even became kingmakers, deciding who would become the next emperor. The Guard also had some unusual duties that might surprise you. They supervised tax collection, monitored grain distribution, and even served as judges in certain legal cases. Talk about a diverse job description. And here's something few people know. Praetorian Guards were also responsible for organizing and supervising the famous Roman games. Yes, those spectacular gladiatorial contests and chariot races were partly managed by these elite warriors. So, what do you think about the Praetorian Guard so far? Has anything surprised you? I bet you didn't expect them to be firefighters and event organizers on top of being the Emperor's elite bodyguards. Drop a comment below and let us know what you find most interesting about these remarkable warriors. If you're enjoying this deep dive into one of history's most fascinating military units, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Legacy of Empires. Ring that bell to make sure you don't miss our next episode, where we'll explore how the Praetorian Guard wielded their immense power in imperial politics. Trust me, some of these stories will leave you speechless. Remember, history isn't just about battles and dates. It's about understanding how people lived, worked, and shaped their world. And few organizations shaped the Roman world quite like the Praetorian Guard. What happens when the emperor's bodyguards become more powerful than the emperor himself? That's exactly what happened with the Praetorian Guard. These elite warriors weren't content with just protecting emperors. They started choosing them. Let me tell you about one of the most shocking events in Roman history. In the year 193 after Christ, following the murder of Emperor Pertinax, the Praetorians did something unthinkable. They literally auctioned off the Roman Empire. Yes, you heard that right. They announced that the imperial throne would go to the highest bidder. A wealthy senator named Didius Julianus won this bizarre auction, paying 25,000 sesterces to each guard. But here's the twist. His reign lasted only 66 days before he was executed. Talk about a bad investment. But this wasn't a one-time thing. The Praetorians had their fingers in almost every major political event in Rome. They could make an emperor's life miserable if they didn't get what they wanted. Many emperors learned this the hard way, like Galba, who refused to pay them their promised bonus. Well, let's just say it didn't end well for him. The Guard's power went far beyond the palace walls. They had spies everywhere, in the Senate, in wealthy homes, even in taverns and marketplaces. Nothing happened in Rome without them knowing about it. They could start riots, spread rumors, or quietly eliminate troublesome politicians. The Praetorians even influenced Roman foreign policy. Some emperors wouldn't dare go to war without consulting their Praetorian prefects first. These prefects became so powerful that several of them later became emperors themselves. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of their power was how they maintained it. The Praetorians mastered the art of playing different factions against each other. They would support one group today and another tomorrow, always ensuring they came out on top. They were masters of what we'd now call political chess. The Guard's influence reached its peak during the crisis of the 3rd century. In just 50 years, they were involved in the rise and fall of numerous emperors. Some emperors lasted only days or weeks before the Praetorians decided they weren't fit to rule. But here's the irony. The very power that made the Praetorians famous also led to their downfall. Emperors became increasingly wary of their influence. Some tried to reform the guard, others tried to limit their power, but in the end, it took someone like Constantine to finally put an end to their reign of power. The story of the Praetorian Guard and their political influence reads like a modern political thriller, full of betrayals, secret deals, and power plays. They showed that in ancient Rome, real power didn't always lie with those who wore the purple. Sometimes it belonged to those who stood in the shadows, watching and waiting for their moment to strike. It's the year 312 after Christ. Rome is in turmoil. Civil war rages between Constantine and his rival Maxentius. The Praetorian Guard, still powerful but perhaps too confident in their own invincibility, makes what would turn out to be their final fatal mistake. They side with Maxentius. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Constantine wasn't just another emperor trying to gain power. He was a brilliant military commander who had seen firsthand how dangerous the Praetorians had become. For too long, these elite guards had played their game of making and breaking emperors. Constantine decided it was time to end this game once and for all. The decisive battle took place at the Milvian Bridge, just outside Rome. Here's something fascinating. The Praetorian Guard, fighting for Maxentius, showed their legendary skill and courage one last time. But Constantine's battle-hardened frontier troops proved too strong. The Guard fought to the last man, true to their reputation, but their time had come. After his victory, Constantine didn't just disband the Praetorian Guard. He systematically dismantled everything they had built, the famous Castra Praetoria, their fortress in Rome. He had it partially demolished, their special privileges revoked. Their very name became a symbol of the past. Constantine was too smart to leave a power vacuum. He created a new unit called the Scholae Palatinae to replace the Praetorians. Think of it as a complete rebranding of the emperor's personal guard. These new guards were carefully selected from frontier provinces, especially from Germanic tribes, rather than from Italy. Constantine knew that soldiers with no ties to Rome's political elite would be less likely to meddle in imperial politics. The Scholae Palatinae were different in other ways too. They were smaller in number, more tightly controlled, and, this is crucial, they answered only to the emperor. No more playing political games, no more making or breaking emperors. What's truly fascinating is how this change reflected a larger transformation in the Roman Empire. Constantine wasn't just replacing one military unit with another. He was signaling the end of an era. Rome was changing, moving away from its traditional power structures toward what would eventually become the Byzantine Empire. The fall of the Praetorian Guard marked the end of a 300-year period where a single military unit could shape the destiny of the world's greatest empire. Think about that. For 3 centuries, these elite warriors had been kingmakers, power brokers, and sometimes even emperors themselves. But perhaps the most ironic part of their story is this. The Praetorian Guard, created to protect the emperor's power, ultimately fell because they had become too powerful themselves. It's one of history's greatest examples of how protectors can become threats to the very authority they're meant to serve. The legacy of the Praetorian Guard lives on, though, in stories, in archaeology, and in the countless books and movies they've inspired. Even today, when we talk about elite military units or presidential security details, we're following in the footsteps of these ancient Roman guards. Ever wondered why almost every science fiction empire has an elite guard protecting its ruler? Star Wars' Imperial Guard, Dune's Sardaukar, countless others, they all draw inspiration from the Praetorians. These ancient Roman guards created the template for what we imagine when we think of elite warriors serving at the heart of power. But their influence goes far deeper than just entertainment. Modern presidential security services worldwide have studied the Praetorian Guard's methods, both their successes and their failures. The US Secret Service, for instance, learned valuable lessons about the delicate balance between protecting leaders and becoming too politically powerful. The term Praetorian has entered our everyday language. When we talk about Praetorian Guards today, we're referring to any group that holds special influence with powerful leaders. The Praetorians left such a mark on history that their name became shorthand for elite protectors. In art and literature, they've been absolutely everywhere. From Renaissance paintings to modern blockbuster movies, the distinctive armor and purple cloaks of the Praetorian Guard have become iconic symbols of power and authority. Shakespeare mentioned them, famous painters depicted them, and Hollywood can't seem to get enough of them. Speaking of movies, have you noticed how the Praetorian Guard appears in almost every major film about ancient Rome? Sometimes as loyal protectors, sometimes as dangerous conspirators, but always as impressive and intimidating figures. Their dramatic story of rise and fall, power and betrayal, just makes for perfect storytelling. But perhaps their most important legacy is in military history. The Praetorian Guard established principles of elite unit organization that armies still use today. Their system of rigorous selection, specialized training, and maintaining small, highly professional units has influenced military thinking for centuries. Even their intelligence-gathering methods have left a lasting mark. The way they combined protective duties with information collection became a model for modern security services. They were doing counterintelligence work before it even had a name. The archaeological legacy of the Praetorians continues to amaze us too. Their fortress, the Castra Praetoria, still partially stands in Rome today. Archaeologists keep finding new artifacts, weapons, armor, personal items that help us understand how these elite warriors lived and worked. And let's talk about their influence on fashion and design. The distinctive look of the Praetorian Guard, their armor, weapons, and especially their ceremonial dress, has inspired military uniforms right up to the present day. Ever noticed how honor guards at presidential palaces often wear plumed helmets? You can thank the Praetorians for that. One of the most intriguing parts of their legacy is how they've become a warning from history. Political scientists and historians still study the Praetorian Guard as a classic example of what happens when protectors become too powerful. Their story teaches us valuable lessons about the balance of power in government. Museums worldwide showcase Praetorian artifacts, from ceremonial swords to coins bearing their image. These items draw countless visitors who want to connect with this fascinating piece of history. Each artifact tells a story of power, loyalty, and the complex relationship between protectors and the protected. The Praetorian Guard's legacy reminds us that history isn't just about past events. It's about how those events continue to shape our world today. Their influence on military organization, political theory, and popular culture shows just how relevant ancient history can be to our modern lives. Well, fellow history enthusiasts, we've reached the end of our incredible journey through one of history's most fascinating military units. The story of the Praetorian Guard is truly a window into the heart of ancient Rome itself, a tale of power, loyalty, betrayal, and transformation. Just think about it. What started as a small group of bodyguards grew into one of the most influential forces in the ancient world. For more than 3 centuries, these elite warriors shaped the destiny of the world's greatest empire. They protected emperors, fought wars, maintained order in Rome's streets, and sometimes even decided who would rule the known world. Their story teaches us something profound about power, how it can protect and destroy, build and break, serve and dominate. The Praetorians weren't just soldiers. They were living proof of how complex and sophisticated Roman civilization really was. They were warriors, yes, but also politicians, spies, firefighters, and kingmakers, all rolled into one. From their humble beginnings as the Celeres under Romulus to their dramatic fall under Constantine, the Praetorian Guard's journey mirrors Rome's own story. They rose to incredible heights of power and influence, only to fall when they became too powerful for their own good. You know what I find most fascinating? How their influence continues to echo through history. Every time you see an elite guard unit, every time you watch a movie about ancient Rome, every time you read about presidential security, you're seeing the legacy of the Praetorian Guard at work. But their greatest lesson might be this: power is a double-edged sword. The same force that made the Praetorians indispensable to some emperors made them dangerous to others. It's a lesson that remains relevant today, don't you think? Speaking of relevant history, we've got some amazing episodes coming up. Want to know about the legendary Spartans and their last stand? Or perhaps you're curious about the mysterious 9th Legion that vanished into the mists of Britain. Maybe you'd like to explore the incredible story of Hannibal and his elephants crossing the Alps. Drop a comment below and let us know which historical mystery you'd like us to uncover next. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Praetorian Guard, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Legacy of Empires. Share this video with that friend who's always talking about ancient history, or anyone who loves a good story of power and intrigue. What modern organizations do you think share similarities with the Praetorian Guard? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's get a discussion going. Remember, history isn't just about memorizing dates and names. It's about understanding how past events shape our present and future. The story of the Praetorian Guard isn't just ancient history. It's a timeless tale of power, loyalty, and the complex relationship between protectors and the protected. This is Legacy of Empires, where we bring history's greatest stories to life. Until our next historical adventure, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning from the past. Don't forget to ring that notification bell to stay updated on our upcoming episodes. Trust me, we've got some incredible historical journeys planned that you won't want to miss. Thank you for joining us on this amazing exploration of the Praetorian Guard. As they say in Latin, veil. Farewell, and see you in our next historical adventure.